Okay, Bob, whenever it's the appropriate time, we are now recording and we are live streaming.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Rainone, I do see that you are here, and when it's the appropriate time, we will ask you to raise your hand to discuss the matter that's on the agenda that you asked for. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 p.m. We'll call to order this meeting of the Town Council. I note that a quorum is present. We'll take a roll call of those councilors present. Councilor Anderson.
Present.
Councilor Golembeski.
Here.
Councilor Mataronis.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor Mushin here. All 5 members of the council are here. I'd like to begin this evening's meeting with a moment of silence in memory of 2 former council members, both of whom have recently passed away. That is Paul Wilbur, who served on the council from 85 to 90, and Bob Dyer, who served on the council from 95 to 96. If we could observe that moment of silence in memory of those 2 public servants. Thank you very much. The next item of business is that of the approval of the minutes of our August 6th meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes of the August 6th Town Council meeting unless anybody has any questions or comments on it.
I'll second that.
The motion is made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski, to approve the minutes as written. Are there comments?
This is Councilor Anderson. I just wanted to ask a question. I don't have strong feelings about it, but on the second page under new business 3, I just wanted to check to make sure that we were on the same page with regard to the sequence of events. I understand that the minutes are not intended to be and shouldn't be a transcript of events, but if I may, I'll just read this and give my recollection of a sequence here and ask for other people's thoughts. This is, and I won't read the whole thing, new business 3 states the nature of the item as it appeared on the agenda. That is, consider requests from Councilor Anderson regarding legal matter. And it says, discussion ensued, which caused some confusion. I agree with that. Then it says, Councilor Anderson asked to read the relevant portion of his letter for clarification. Then it quotes, for that reason, I respectfully request that the town council schedule an executive session with Mr. Galvin as soon as practically possible to discuss the status of the Vineyard case. End of quote. At that point, by my recollection, I said something to the effect, and that is my motion. That is, at that point, I offered that very statement as a motion. And I think it should be included at that point. That's my recollection. I didn't review the whole recording of the meeting today. And then there was, then it recounts discussion, Mrs. McKenzie, a response by me. There was additional discussion. At some point there, Council Member Moore interrupted or commented that he had seconded my motion, as I recall. We may have had some more discussion. As I did review the tape today, at that point, Town Clerk Wardell repeated my statement pretty much verbatim in the form that it is quoted in the minutes, and then we voted on it. And the final vote recorded here is slightly different in form than my motion. So I don't want to be a nitpicker here, but in terms of the sequence, I do think that after the quoted passage, for that reason, I respectfully request that the council schedule an executive session and so forth. I do believe that it should say, and Councilor Anderson offered that in the form of a motion. I don't have any dispute with the next paragraph, but I do think it might be worth then mentioning Councilmember Moore noted that he had seconded Councilor Anderson's motion. That's really all I'm suggesting. I don't propose to if that comports with other people's memory of the sequence of events.
But doesn't it say that in the minutes? It said motion made by Councilor Anderson, receiving a second by Councilor Moore. Is that what you want to change?
Well, I frankly, I just want to clarify the sequence of events. I'm not going, don't want to fight a battle on this. I just want to make sure that my motion is noted as the motion at the time I made it. And it does say that Councilor Moore seconded it, so I don't have any real argument, but I do think that it should be noted that I immediately made that motion. I think it should be.
If I might comment, I do believe you did say it that way. So I, as the scrivener here, I have no problem with adding the statement that you just asked for.
Would it resolve the concern by exchanging the last two paragraphs on the page? In other words, suppose the motion followed immediately behind the quote.
Except it wasn't voted at that time, Bob. So I think Larry is correct in suggesting what he has. Just makes the minutes more accurate.
Yeah, if I'm understanding, Carol, if it just said after my quoted passage and Councilor Anderson offered that statement as a motion, if it just said that, I think the rest of it would be in proper sequence.
Okay, I understand.
And if that's understood as an amendment, I offer that as an amendment to the minutes.
So the motion is then made by Councilor Anderson to amend the minutes in the manner he's described. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Second is by Councilor Moore. So the motion to amend is made by Councilor Anderson, second by Moore, to add a statement after the quote in the third to the last paragraph that states that as his motion. Then the remainder remains the same. Is that right?
That's fine with me. Yeah.
All right. Are you? Is there any discussion regarding the amendment? Are you ready to vote on the amendment? Councilor Anderson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Golembeski.
Just a quick question. I'm sorry. I want to oppose the main motion, but I don't oppose his word change. So if I vote aye,
This is the
to the
amendment only.
change, my opposition to the original motion stays. Is that correct?
This vote is for the amendment only.
Amendment only. Okay, aye then.
Councilor Mataronis,
Aye.
Councilor Moore,
Aye.
Councilor Mushin, aye. So that motion, that amendment passes. Now the amended minutes are there up for discussion, having been voted, having been moved and seconded. Councilor Golembeski, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my air conditioner kicked on and I didn't hear what you just said, sir.
It said, turn off your air conditioner. No, I said that we are now ready to discuss the main motion, which is approval of the minutes.
Oh, aye.
No, sir. You indicated you had a comment to make on the approval of the minutes.
Actually, if I might clarify, I think he was referring to the fact that in the minutes itself, the motion we're discussing, he was opposed in that motion. He was worried that his approval of the amendment might alter his opposition taken.
I understand. No, that paragraph remains.
That will remain the same.
The original vote stays the same. The amendment is what I'm approving.
That is correct.
That was my question. I thought that was clear, but
Understood now. Sorry. Is there then any further comment regarding the minutes of August 6th? I'll call then for a vote on the motion to approve those minutes. Councilor Anderson, as amended. Councilor Anderson.
Aye. Thank you.
Councilor Golembeski.
aye.
Councilor Mataronis.
Aye.
Councilor Moore.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. The next item of business is announcements. There are not announcements listed in your agenda. I would like to take this opportunity to announce the hiring of Joseph DeSantis, who has joined us on this virtual meeting. Mr. DeSantis has been hired as the town's first finance director, and he will be beginning shortly a process of turnover with the town treasurer. Welcome aboard to Joe, and we're very pleased to have him as part of our team. The second announcement is that census takers and follow-up personnel will be in town pursuing those respondents who have not had an opportunity yet to respond to the census. So if you see people knocking on doors, that would be the reason for that. If you've not responded to the census, I would encourage you to do that.
Bob, Councilman Mataronis,
Yes.
I'd like to welcome Joe DeSantis on board, and I'm thankful that he's up and running and on this Zoom meeting also.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, the first item of old business then is to consider an extension of declaration of emergency, which currently expires tomorrow, August 21st. As I believe I described to you last meeting, my intention would be that we approve extensions of our declaration of emergency on a monthly basis, and that expiration would nominally be on the Friday after the second Thursday meeting of the month. Accordingly, I would entertain a motion to extend our declaration of emergency to the 24th of September. To the 25th of September.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
The motion is made and seconded to extend the declaration of emergency to September 25th. Is there discussion?
Bob, this is Councilor Anderson. Just to be clear, the declaration we propose to extend is in the form that we adopted, I would say, at the end of April, maybe. I don't have in front of me the form of the extension. We adopted an original one, then we amended it slightly a couple months later.
That's correct.
Is that the one we intend to, is that what we're extending?
It is that we intend to extend, that amended April version of our declaration of emergency. And the technique by which I would do that is a special directive, in this case, to issue a revision 1 that has now therefore the Little Compton Town Council on 20 August 2020 extended the state of emergency in the town through the 25th of September 2020, unless renewed, modified, or terminated by
Okay, thank you.
any further discussion. Then on the motion, Councilor Anderson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Councilor Golembeski,
Aye.
Councilor Mataronis,
Aye.
Councilor Moore,
Aye.
and Councilor Mushin, aye. Thank you. The next item is an update from the Little Compton Housing Trust on progress concerning affordable housing strategic planning in town. In your packet is a letter from the from the Housing Trust, from the chair, and I note that the chair is with us this evening, and wonder if Mr. Bowen would have any comments for us. He has given us 3 issues to clarify for him. And yes, sir, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It's like Hollywood Squares. Thank you for the work that you do. I don't know if anyone among you has a question regarding the letter that was submitted or a comment.
We can certainly ask for that. Is there anyone who wishes to? Councilor Moore.
Yeah, I just want to note, I think that Patrick's memo to the council is very on point with the discussion that the Housing Trust had last week. And I think it's worth noting that the action steps that he lists, I think are going to put the Housing Trust on a really good direction going forward, and will help guide us in the next year. And I think that the clarification, just going down, a comment on the clarification requested for the town council. I have not had a chance to speak with Patrick about these directly because I've been mulling them over today. I don't know if these are issues that the council will be able to answer directly, but we might have to get some outside clarification or from another source. So I'll talk with Patrick offline about that. But thank you so much for this memo, and I think it's going to put us in a good direction going forward.
Good.
Well, by way of clarification, it's important to note, as I did in the letter here, that there's been a lot of discussion about affordable housing of late, primarily at the financial town meeting, which sort of took some of us by surprise. And it should be noted that it was not, in fact, the Housing Trust, but it was an individual who was making a motion and proposal and so forth. But I think one of the fortunate outcomes there has been a greater awareness and a wider discussion of the matter. It was also discussed at the planning board with Chairman Steers, as some of you may know, with another individual. So among those frustrating elements that we tend to have as a recurring item here are lack of funding. And I compliment the town council's September 2018 motion, which enabled building permit fees to be included toward housing, affordable housing funds, toward a housing trust fund. One of the problems or limitations that exist there now is our ability to actually use that in a timely way. So part of that motion in 2018 was that this expenditure would have to be approved by financial town meeting.
Yeah, Bob, Gary, I didn't realize that, but I think maybe we should have the solicitor look at this, because I totally agree with Patrick. If a piece of property comes up and he's got to wait a year before he can expend that 75,000 or whatever happens to be there at the time, that's going to be very prohibitive for them to do the job that they were authorized, or the charge that they were authorized to do. So
Right. That at the moment is a charter restriction that requires that to happen. Therefore, one of the things that I see coming out of this discussion is potentially a move toward streamlining that process. But right now, the town may not acquire something without approval of the voters at a town meeting. Now, a town meeting, in the event of, for instance, a solution could be to convene a town meeting if a particularly attractive offer came up, and we could do that. But it does require that. Short of that, it requires changing the charter to allow the council or some other entity to decide to acquire and expend funds to do it. I acknowledge that that's a limitation at the moment. What I would suggest is that we pursue a path similar to what we did this year and the year before, in that we had a little bit of a heads up that we were going to be offered a piece of land on which to put a parking lot. And then more recently, we were offered an opportunity to exchange properties. So I acknowledge that right now the process is cumbersome, but that's one of the things that probably should come out of the conversation. And that is among the changes or recommendations that I might propose that we consider to streamline that process.
If I might interject, Bob. So according to the bylaws of the Housing Trust, we are able to accept donations, either of money or of land, property. In the event that we were to receive a windfall donation,
Yes.
it seems to me from what I read in the bylaws that there would be no such restriction on expenditure, given what we're authorized to do as a trust. So what I'm saying is the only limitation, as per what you've just mentioned, would be with regard to those funds that have been accrued by way of building permit fees and or the annual appropriation. In my estimation, that's how I read it and interpret it.
I would think we would want to have a review, but I would not disagree with what you've said as being a possible already existing path to acquiring funds.
This is Councilmember Anderson. I tuned in on a part of the excellent Housing Trust meeting the other day, where there was a good discussion about some of these matters, and I think that Patrick's summary on their behalf of the action items and these clarification issues is excellent outline of these issues. I will say on this point of the legal issues, having been both an observer and a participant in some degree on a couple of charter review commissions where some of this language was developed, and having watched the origin of the housing trust as it came out of the state requirement for some of these things, I do think that there's that we sort of have to go back to the beginning almost and follow the steps that have been developed with regard to the different, we've mentioned charters, ordinances, bylaws. Some of the legal mechanisms here are simply not really legally consistent in my opinion. And I do think with some kind of legal advice, either the town solicitor or perhaps the housing trust with funds and its authority can retain its own legal counsel, that really you almost have to go back to the beginning, put all the pieces on the table, see how they fit together. And I think we're identifying the issue, but the solution is going to be a multiple step thing, I believe, including the access, even most recently, including the mechanism for this relatively recent developed funding mechanism is in an ordinance. It's really a footnote in a table. That can be modified by a council if it needs to be. I think the town meeting vote is a little ambiguous about the trust access to the fund. So my feeling is this is a good discussion. You really have to go back to the beginning, put all the pieces on the table and see how they fit together and where the friction is. And anyway, it's an excellent start. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't want to delay the meeting or belabor the point. If there's anyone who has a question or a comment, I'm happy to do my best to answer it or to entertain any. As you see, the three areas of clarification would be access to those funds. And the annual financial town meeting allocates $6,000 toward affordable housing. Now, noteworthy here is that I think there were 5 separate nonprofit organizations which received a total of in excess of $11,000 of town money. So if we were to just look at it from a priority standpoint, clearly affordable housing is not a priority in this town. And it's my hope that we can come up with a creative solution to take care of those needs in this town for those people who need affordable housing and not have it shoved down our throat, if you will. And I do think that we have a lot of good people in this town who are creative and who are more than willing to chip in and work toward that end. So I look forward to continuing the discussion and continuing the work with anyone who might be interested.
Good. And I would ask that Councillor Moore, as the liaison, be your conduit as he has been to us, needs that you might identify. But I think this is, as others have said, is a good summary of where we stand now and what kinds of things we need to work on.
Thank you all very much. I look forward to keeping you up to date about the progress that we hope to make.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. The next item of business is a copy of a letter from, Chief Rains from the Rhode Island State Traffic Commission announcing a meeting which I understand did not happen on August 5th. Therefore, our request was not dealt with. Chief Rains.
That's correct, sir. There was a lack of a quorum on August 5th, and I checked their website, and there has not been a rescheduled date.
Is there a motion to place this letter on file?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Golembeski, second by Mataronis. Further discussion. Councilor Anderson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Motion aye. Thank you. The next item is one of new business, a request in your packet from Kim and Richard Renone asking the council to consider resident parking only on Town Way for beach access. As the clerk has pointed out to us, Mr. and Mrs. Renone are on the call or on the line with us as well.
Mr. and Mrs. Renone, you can speak now. We can't hear you at the moment. I am afraid that his microphone is not working because I can't see it active on my side.
Let me summarize while they're attempting to gain access to the meeting. The resident parking only was proposed as a solution to what Mr. Renone characterized as a large number of people with unknown health status potentially parking on Town Way near the beach, and was suggesting a solution of allowing resident-only parking there. Both the town administrator and the police chief have been working the issue of parking to a significant extent recently. And I would propose, in the absence of another solution at this point, to ask the two of them to take this matter under consideration in keeping with what they're doing today.
Bob, I see that there was a letter written by Mr. Renone to CRMC.
Yes,
If he can hear us, and he could get the response to the town council to see what their thought is on this situation, I think that would be helpful for Tony and the police chief to make their decision.
yes. His final paragraph in that letter indicates, I would also like to ask about the parking on Town Way. Your write-up in your Rhode Island Access Guide, speaking now to the CRMC, says there's parking for 10 cars. Who has jurisdiction over that, the CRMC or the town of Little Compton? I think it's fair to say, in answer to that question, it is the town who has jurisdiction and authority over the parking on Town Way. The CRMC's guide, I believe in this case, reflects their knowledge of what it is that we've established there.
Comment, if I may, sir?
Yeah,
I just don't want this to turn into another Rhode Island road. We don't know where the lines and the boundaries are. Are the boundaries pretty well set there? We know where all the, where the town property is, or is there vaguity to any of this?
well, I'm not certain of the response to that question. I appreciate the point. I believe we do not have the same issue at Town Way that we do on Rhode Island Road, or we did on Rhode Island Road. There is not encroachment, rather the question is, who should be allowed to park there? Not so much where is the parking. The parking is clearly established as being on the roadway, and property owners' property boundaries are not in contest to my knowledge.
Okay.
And there is another resident from that area that would like to speak.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Marinossi. You are muted, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
I'll add a little background to this whole issue that Mr. Renone outlined in his letter, because he did forward me a copy of his correspondence. And first of all, that area at the end of Town Way is listed with CRMC as a site passage. In other words, it's not listed for anything but walking down there and walking on the beach. It's not listed for swimming. It's not listed for anything other than to view the water. Go to that area, walk down the beach, come back, and they also list a number of things that are not permitted there by CRMC. No swimming, no boating, no launching. And right now, we have people coming down there with trailers of kayaks. They come down there, they park with a trailer with 6 kayaks on it, and they're teaching kayaking off this area. We also have a number of people who come down there and attempt to launch their boat, and we turn them away. So I think it's more than just a parking issue. The issue is, what is this spot? Now, I have a lot of experience with CRMC and rights of way because we had one on our property in East Greenwich. And CRMC feels that they control the area from the water on. They don't control the land use area. On the right of way we had in East Greenwich, they literally would stop me from cutting the grass. Over here, I can't get them to look at it. And it's dismaying to us as residents because this area is it's a hodgepodge of what I would call what the governor is going through down in Scarborough Beach at times. It's terrible down here. We have people parking on people's lawns. We have them parking in our driveways. We've got them parking down the road and walking up. And when I tell you beach goers, I'm talking about 15 and 20 people getting out of cars that are obviously from out of town and going down to the water and parking in places you wouldn't believe. They not only do that, they leave their trash, and we go out there and pick it up. We put it in the town barrel, if you will, and it's just out of hand. And I think what has to happen is we have to get a sign there to control it, to let them know it's not a beach, there's no swimming, there's no lifeguard. We have to let them know there's no launching. There should be a fence there with an opening in it so people don't go down there with large vehicles, if you will. There should be less parking spaces there. Mr. Renone's house is inundated with cars all the time. I get them as an overflow into the front of my house. And they come down this hill doing 40 miles an hour only to find out the road ends. And I really believe somebody has to look at this carefully because there's going to be an accident here. Somebody's going to get very hurt and we're all going to wonder why. And I've been fighting this 20 years. And I think I'd be willing to pay for the fence. I'd be willing to pay for the sign. But we have to, we really have to look at this and say, this is the town's baby and we should take care of it. Because CRMC put it in their catalog. And I think I sent you, Mr. Munchin, a copy of CRMC's description of this. They've got a complete catalog on the whole state. Every one of these items is described differently. And this one is described as I said. And what we should do is say, how many cars should be here? And what should we be doing here? I found out there's a couple of moorings here now from people who are on a long highway. Now that means they come down here with their car, they look in the park somewhere to access their mooring. And why is that? This place isn't a parking lot. The moorings here were for the people who lived right here. But I had a person stop and say, yeah, my mooring's here. Well, where do you live? Well, on the other side of town. Well, I know it's nice, but there's a yacht club down the end of the road, and there's moorings in the cove, and I don't see that they should be coming here, parking their automobile, and utilizing their mooring here, because it's a residential area, this place. We do have children here during the summer from families who live here. And now it's on a Sunday when it's really warm, this place is dangerous. I mean, people are coming down this road, turning around. They've backed into my wall 3 or 4 times. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. And I guess my frustration is showing. I'm using a lot of words, but I just really want someone to take a good look at this and say, I'll help you. I'm knowledgeable about this. I own 5 marinas. And for me to look at this and the way this area is being treated is really, really unfortunate. I don't know how Mr. Rainone stays there. I mean, he's got 25 cars sometimes. They're double parked in there. And we call the police constantly. They respond. What a terrible way to use the police force when we're busy in this town, to have them taking care of cars that are from some other place that don't pay taxes here like we do. So I'm as I said, I'm willing to get involved to do whatever's got to be done and get this matter behind us. Thank you.
There's a couple more hands that are up. One might be Mrs. Rainone. It's just listed as Kim.
Yes, thank you.
You will need to mute the other connection that you had in order not to have that feedback.
Okay, do we do that? No, sorry. Turn it off. Okay. We're getting rid of that other.
Yeah, I muted it from here.
I think we're okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So just to add to what Sal was speaking to, we have been so that you know that he's not exaggerating in the numbers of cars or the numbers of people. We have been taking photos of congregating on the end of the street where they're kind of makeshifting like it's South Shore Beach. So they'll bring their chairs and they'll sit at the end of the road if it's high tide. If it's not high tide, I have a photo. I can send these photos to you just so that you understand the decrease of people we've seen in the area. We believe strongly it's due to COVID because South Shore has restricted their numbers in parking. Ogden Beach has done the same. So people are coming to other areas to seek access to a beach.
Yeah, hi, this is Richard Rainone and President Mushin, thank you for having us here. To echo what Sal and my wife just said, you folks just see measures to extend it on a month-to-month basis. My industry is probably not going to go back to work until January, most likely later. I have never seen such an increase in the amount of both foot traffic and cars as I've seen recently. I bought the house. I knew it was on a public road. I knew there was parking there, and I'm not trying to prevent anybody from going down on Town Way to enjoy it. Everybody has a right to that. My question to the town council is, what emergency measures are you guys looking at? Are you aware of this influx of people? We have pictures. We have evidence of folks. Nobody wears a mask. I have a special needs son who doesn't know better, who just runs out our front door and goes, says hi to folks, which is fine, but there's a pandemic going on. And the town took emergency measures at South Beach. I'd like to know, one, are you aware of what's been happening on Town Way? And number two, since we're bringing it to your attention, should there be a discussion around emergency measures to cut back on that traffic? Many of the cars are from out of state. I firmly believe it's because of the overflow from people not being able to get into South Shore Beach. You get to go down to Town Way, you get to park for free, and you get to go and use it. That's fine. But that area sometimes has as many as, and I think I counted one time, like 16 cars. 16 cars, all tightly packed together. Our cars have been dinged and hit, and that's not why I'm making this call. But my question is, what are you doing to make the residents of this area safe? And should we take a long-term look at, hey, this is Little Compton, maybe we should just make it accessible to residents? Is that potentially a solution, both short-term and long-term? If you guys need to see any photos or pictures or anything like that, I have things that I can supply. And again, I'm not about shutting it down for anybody, but something definitely needs to be done. Thank you.
Bob, can I say something?
Sure.
Rich and Kim and Sal, Gary Mataronis, I feel what you're going through, because Secana Point this year has been the same way. I've never seen so many people down here. The parking on Saturday and Sunday is horrendous. We have a problem in Fisherman's Lot with the fishermen transversing in and out. So I feel what you're going through. Town administrator and Chief Raines have been very helpful with me down at the point. They've been putting up signage for me, and that's helped quite a bit. Maybe, and I'm not directing this on to Tony, but I guess I am. Maybe if you went in to see our town administrator with some of those pictures, and maybe we could come up with signage about what's allowed down there. And without signage, the police can't really enforce anything. With signage, they can. So I'm just throwing that out there, and of course, that's up to the town administrator to say whether he wants to take that on or not. So, but I do feel the pain.
Go ahead, Administrator.
Certainly, I'll be more than glad to. The chief and I certainly will take a look at it, follow up on some of the conversation that's had. I know CRMC was brought into the picture already. I would be more than glad to reach, not more glad, I would or will reach out to them and find out also what is the position of CRMC there. But certainly we can come up with some options and some ideas for the next council meeting.
It sounds to me like a couple of suggestions that have been made are relatively fast to implement. That would be signage, which we know how to do. And the idea of a fence restricting access to foot traffic only, given that we look at the legal ramifications of CRMC's characterization as being accurate. I mean, I'm taking at face value what's been said. If the CRMC description of that site permits a limited set of things, as Sal has indicated, and I have no reason to suspect that it doesn't, then a fence would allow at least a visible restriction. And I say that in light of the fact that we used a gate at South Shore, and it took a great deal of grief and concern on the part of the citizens of the town, but I think it moved us in the correct direction. So something like that might be a way to avoid establishing a permanent police force there trying to enforce parking that's not intended. We had intended, I think, several years ago when we revised the parking ordinances for the roads proximate to the beach in various areas to account for people who were walking down to the beach and needed a place to park to walk from. But we had no intention of it being used as a launching point for watercraft and that sort of thing. So those two ideas appear to be relatively quick to implement.
Bob, if I may?
Yeah.
I just want the fire chief included in this with the town administrator, only because I think that sometimes they rescue might use that as an access point, put the boat in, like the small boat. And I just don't want to burn a bridge by putting either a too small of gate or a fence up that doesn't allow them access. Just an FYI thing.
Okay.
It's Councilmember Anderson, and
Yes.
I think Town Administrator Texeira's point about being in communication with CRMC throughout this is important. When I went after receiving the information about this as it was on our agenda from the neighbors, and went to the CRMC site, you know, right away you learn that the CRMC's jurisdiction and approach to public rights of way is pretty complicated, and they have different classifications. In this case, when you go through the links, and I throw this out because we've been dealing with these issues sort of one by one as they've arisen, different locations in town. I did note that Townway, Taylor's Lane, and the Secundit Point ramp were all designated in '84 by the same legal procedure. It's at the CRMC website as CRMC designated rights of way with meets and bounds and legal descriptions and the legal rationale for the CRMC's designation under their authority by state law. So that I think maybe the boat ramp has evolved somewhat since 1984, but the other location that may not be experiencing quite the same intensity as Townway, but seems to be sort of legally a counterpart is Taylor's Lane.
Yeah.
So I would say that, you know,
I have a copy of that document. In fact, I meant to include a copy of that document in tonight's discussion, but I don't attend too many town meetings, and I did not have an opportunity to get that out to everybody. I have that document. I've read the document, and I will get that forwarded to everybody. The question I had for CRMC is, what are they aware of?
Right.
What do they know about Townway? They have a picture of a 1972 Pinto in that document, and I don't know if they've ever been there since. So with the governor of Rhode Island setting emergency measures, with the town of Little Compton setting emergency measures, where does CRMC fall in line with all this as well? They've opened up a gate here that says this is a right of way. And now, you know, if you measured out the size of where folks park down there, they're on top of one another, and nobody wears a mask. Nobody.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes. One of the things that Mr. Raynone and myself have talked about is a sticker for, we now have a sticker for the dump, a sticker for people who park there. Another thing that I would like to see is, I think for that area, 10 parking spaces on two sides of that type of right of way are too many spaces. Because of the use that area is supposed to enjoy. In other words, it's not supposed to be a beach, so that why do we need 10 spaces? It's supposed to be a place somebody would drive to and walk along the beach and then go home. It's not supposed to be a place where you congregate and 15 or 20 people go swimming. And so I really would like to see the parking curtailed somewhat, because there's a lot of problems with the parking. Once both sides, and Mr. Raynone's side is, I mean, totally filled, and the end of the street is totally filled, and some of the side streets are totally filled, then people start jockeying around trying to find a different parking space. So I think there has to be striping, there has to be a designated parking spot, and they have to mark it on a sign saying parking for 5 cars, that's it. And so that when somebody comes down here to go use the beach, they know right away, well, there's no parking here. And I'm just looking for control. In other words, CRMC controls from the end of Townway into the water, period. I know, I've dealt with them. I've been in court with them. That's what they control. They don't control Townway. They only control the end of Townway into the water, high water mark. from the end of Mr. Raynone's property and the end of the property across the street from him into the water. That's it. They don't control our street. And I would like to see us take control and tell CRMC to make a sign if they want to advertise it, make a sign that's appropriate, that aligns with the sign, with the verbiage they have in their catalog. That's all we're asking for. Advertise it the way it was meant. And that way, our police force can go down there and say, oh, no, you can't do that. See? But right now, there is no sign. There's nothing. And the only thing we have there is 2 trash cans. By the way, they fill them. These
Right.
out-of-state cars.
Right, we are dumping all out-of-state trash.
Yeah. I've seen people come down here with mass plates, throw trash in the thing and leave. And I mean, I
think
just,
the issues have been identified, at least for this first step, which are signage, crowd control, I'll call it, in a broad sense. That would include proper masks, distancing, as well as the ability to constrain the size of things that move back and forth. So signs, crowd control, and parking. I would ask them.
President Motion, I'm just going to jump in one last time. I do agree with Sal. I think there should be consideration given for residents only, just like they do in other communities in Massachusetts, like Plymouth. You go to Plymouth, you want to get to the water, you have to be a resident in order to get there.
That's my point in the parking issue. You are certainly correct that we have been looking at the ways in which we might restrict parking to only residents of the town. That has pros and cons associated with it, but that's what I would intend by the parking charge.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mushin, there is another resident that's had their hand up to talk on this matter. It's the other person on the screen, Amy Lotz.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to voice, not necessarily another side of the argument, but just a voice that I have been a resident of Little Compton for 34 years. And I have been attending Townway down at the beach for those 34 years. And over that time, I have seen definitely an increase in cars down there. I agree with that, but I do have to speak for those of us that have been down there wearing masks, because that has been occurring. And in regards to, in regards to the parking situation, a lot of that I would argue is due to the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Renone park their vehicles and their boat and trailer occupying the spots in the parking lot. So it really does restrict the amount of parking that even residents would be able to have. So that is a concern of mine. Also, I used to live in the neighborhood. I no longer live there. I'm still a town resident. I also have pictures of Mr. and Mrs. Renone's boat being docked directly in front of where people enter the water. And when I say people, I'm talking about my special needs uncle. And he is unaware of, the imminent dangers of a boat and the anchor being directly in front of where he is walking into the water. And he walks in the only area where there is access without the slippery rocks of the beach. He's been going there for over 60 years doing that same thing. So I do think that both, while there is a point that traffic has increased, I want to make sure that, one, we're being honest about what is happening at the beach, which is I have witnessed a lot of people wearing masks. I have also witnessed parking spots being intentionally taken just for the purpose of other people not being able to park and enjoy the beach. And as far as, I'm sorry, I forget his last name, but Mr. Sal's understanding that cars go 40 miles an hour and then don't know that they have to stop at the end. I don't even know how that would be physically possible for that to happen. I also just think it's important to voice that I certainly hope this is not a way and a means of decreasing any sort of diversity that would be coming into the town that would be maybe parking there. I have noticed a more diverse crowd, and I certainly hope that that is not the issue that we are experiencing now in these attempts to limit the parking just to residents. I just think that we should be very careful about that. This to say that it's a beach that's not a beach when it has a parking lot where residents and non-residents have been able to park for years. I don't quite understand that argument. We are a beach town. That's a public parking lot. There is a beach there. I don't understand how people could park there to walk on the beach, but not be allowed to walk in the water. So essentially, insinuating that there should be a time limit for somebody to be parked down at the beach parking lot. I just don't see how that is a logical use of our resources. And I agree with Sal and Mr. and Mrs. Renone about the police department. It's an unneeded way for the town to be spending their money. And I've spoken to police when they have been called by the neighbors. And they are just as frustrated that they have to continuously go down there just to try to police people legally parking to go to the beach. I can't speak for everybody down there. I've never witnessed anybody throwing their trash out anywhere else besides the receptacles provided by the town. I also have witnessed, as Mr. and Mrs. Renone mentioned, their son. I have been approached by him and I've been wearing a mask and he has not been wearing a mask. So I do just think we have to be very careful about how we are, how we are going about this issue. The issue of residents only is not my issue. That I understand completely, but there were a lot of falsehoods spoken, and I think that needs to be noted.
I appreciate your perspective there, and that certainly will be factored into the process of deciding first and second steps. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there then a motion to assign this matter to the town administrator and with emphasis on the items that we have identified?
So moved.
Second.
The motion is made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski, to task the town administrator with returning to the council with a proposed changes that are under their purview. Any further discussion?
Just make sure that both chiefs are involved, that's all.
May I ask Councilmember Anderson, is the scope of this proposed motion confined to Town Way, or is it a more general set of questions?
I'm suggesting that we do this first step. I don't see it as the final step on Town Way, but neither do I see it as being limited to Town Way. Perhaps we can, in the process of returning with solutions, speak more broadly, but I'd like to, this is the matter that's been brought before us. I'd like to resolve this without trying to wait and solve all the others as well. So yes, to answer your question, this would be limited to Town Way, but certainly keeping in mind Taylor's Lane and other.
I would like to just jump in, if I may, just to address what Ms. Lotz had said. If the town feels, as Ms. Lotz has said, that it's a parking lot, then certainly a gate with a full-time employee policing the area should be a consideration. It's not my understanding that it's a parking lot. It's my understanding that it's a road. I also would like to address that we really don't park our cars on the road. It's our home. We do park occasionally in the front, but we've been scratched, vandalized, and hit. So we usually put all our cars now in the driveway. That certainly has opened up more spaces. And lastly, her uncle that she's referring to, that everybody knows, Tony, and I've got to know him myself for the last 10 years. He, like my son, doesn't wear a mask. These are intellectually disabled people. That's very difficult to get them to actually wear a mask. So with that, I hope you take this under consideration with the emergency measures that you have made, and just try to figure out a way to curtail the increase that we've seen down there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to finish my thought, Councilmember Anderson. I just want to make sure then that the motion actually says Town Way.
I'll ask the clerk to read the motion as she has it, and we'll determine that.
Oh, boy. Well, from your discussion, I would say now that your motion is to assign to the town administrator, with the input from the police and fire chiefs, to review the concerns raised for Town Way and to return to a future council meeting with recommended solutions.
I believe that accurately reflects the motion, yes. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Anderson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you to those who contributed to this. It makes it a much more informed decision. We will commit to moving as quickly as possible on this to return with a solution. The next item of business is consideration of a proposed home produce stand zoning ordinance amendment submitted by Councilmember Anderson. Councilor Anderson.
I will just try to be brief here. I don't propose to describe the whole memo or ordinance that I offered, and I confess that I propose this at this time partly because I know my term is coming to an end. But I did want to get on the table a narrowly framed matter of consideration that I think can be a constructive but clear guideline for an opportunity that would be available to all property owners in a clearly understood way that would allow for what I'm calling small home produce stands as a clearly permitted use in residential and business zones. Having said that, I am also mindful that, and I briefly give in my memo the history of, actually my date is wrong, I lost track of a year. The process by which we've considered so-called farm promotion accessory uses, we kicked this off back in December of 2018. I put 2019. I lost track of a year. We referred, the planning board gave us a broader farm promotion accessory use proposal. We sent it back to them to ensure that it get more input. They made a lot of progress, and this recent year has been problematic. But I am mindful that, as in the past, I'm not trying to spring anything on anybody, and I have a proposal and a motion here. Although this proposal is intended to apply to the whole community, it also affects, of course, and is related to this farm question. So I'm going to offer a motion and then allow it for discussion. I'm going to offer a motion to defer action on the proposed home produce stand zoning amendment until the town council September 10th meeting in order to provide notification to farmers as provided by Chapter 20 of the town code. I want to bend over backwards to make sure that, as the law and the ordinance requires, that the designated farmer community by law have proper notice of any proposed zoning amendment. So in a way, I think, although the whole community is affected, I think it may be premature to get into the substance of this until we follow the procedural requirement to send out the legally required notification to farmers. So that is in the form of a motion.
Is there a second to the motion to defer until the...
If I'll second it. And I'm having trouble hearing it again today, but it sounds like you're deferring this to a later date, Larry?
On the provision that the town clerk send out the formal notification to farmers as provided by law and charter.
Okay, yep, second. That's a good second for me.
The motion is made and seconded. I would also point out that when it comes time for us to consider this, that our action would likely be, since this modifies the zoning ordinance, to refer this to the planning board. And I noticed you've copied them. Would you care to comment briefly on what motivates this? You mentioned that your term is ending, but is this resolving something that people are having difficulty with? Because there are countless of these kinds of things throughout town, and I'm not aware of problems with it.
Well, so again, I'm not trying to stir up a whole debate of all these farm uses, but the challenge that we faced, everybody involved in this discussion, planning board, town council, the farm community, and citizens, and I won't go down another avenue, but this is also a result of the vineyard issues about the definition of uses that are related to agriculture that have been acceptable and workable in town for generations. You know, have gotten more problematic, and
Okay.
and
to tighten the definition of what constitutes.
right, and so the and I'll be honest. I'll be honest about this. I've taken some flack, I know, from people who said that Anderson wants to close down farm stands in the course of the discussion that arose about the prior drafts of the accessory things. Of course, I didn't draft those, but I got plenty of feedback saying, "Oh, Anderson wants to close down farm stands." There's the challenge is defining things. What's a farm stand? What's a farm store? What's a farm market? It's one thing to have a 150 square foot stand. It's another thing to have a 1,500 square foot one or a 15,000 square foot one. We have no definitions. So I thought that the easiest one and a clear one that does, and I will just read a couple sentences from my proposal, just so I'm clear. The purpose of my draft proposal is to clarify and support such small-scale agricultural activity use as a permitted accessory use to a single residence to all property owners in the R and B districts, because it's in a way a de facto use now, as you point out. But my other point is I want to emphasize, and I'll emphasize it doubly strongly, in the strongest possible terms, that my proposal is not intended in any way to limit, regulate, or otherwise interfere with the operations of any existing commercial farm stands, greenhouses, or other agricultural enterprises. But I am concerned, and I'll tell you, almost every day, I saw, just driving home from my home to here today, this evening, I saw a new stand go up in a place that wasn't there this morning. And I'm for these things, but the literal, if we look at the literal language of our ordinance, for instance, it says accessory structures are prohibited in yard setbacks. So we're allowing structures that are otherwise prohibited to go up in setbacks that are prohibited. Now, I think my proposal is to make an exception for that, as long as the uses are that the size is defined, and traffic, without putting any parking requirement other than not to obstruct the road. Those are the only two guidelines, and they're not even strictly defined. So my goal is to be constructive, not to prevent anybody from doing anything, but to, going forward, encourage such uses in a way that at least has some minimal guideline for anybody who wants to do it. So that's the sum of my intent.
I thought that your bold comments were worth emphasizing, hence I wanted to give you that opportunity to make that case, because that's how I interpret what it is. All right, are we ready to vote on this?
Bob, I think, I'm sure the zoning official got a copy of this. I'd like you to comment from him also at the September 10th meeting to see if he's had any difficulty enforcing anything.
Well, if I may, my motion is to defer defer our decisions until the next meeting.
I
That is to
understand what
say-
your motion is, Larry, but I'd like to have comment from the zoning official at that meeting, so I can have something to vote on at that meeting.
Okay, well, the process, as Bob mentioned, would be to, the stated process in the ordinance is to present these proposals to the, I did send it to the planning board already, so I don't disagree with that. I mean, but the procedure at that point under the ordinance is to send it to the building official and to the planning board. But I don't object to sending it to the building official at this point. It's a public document now anyway, so.
Any further comments? Counselor Anderson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Golembeski,
Aye.
Matareras,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
motion aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item of business is to receive the arbitration award that we have been awaiting in case 2017-0241, which is the plaintiff's neighbors versus the Secana Vineyard and the council. And I was tasked with speaking with Attorney Galvin, which I have done, and he is able and willing to come and meet with us in executive session. I've also offered that if we were able to do it remotely, that based upon my conversation with all of you, he may or may not need to be personally present. He could be present as our solicitor is tonight. But just quickly, the award had 5 points. The arbitrator can't implement a sound mitigation plan such as the DSS approach unless the parties agree to it. The arbitrator holds that no new sound attenuation testing for wedding events is necessary. The arbitrator holds that per paragraph 4 of the MOU, the cost for sound attenuation expert and collection shall be shared equally by the plaintiffs and the vineyard defendants. The arbitrator recommends and encourages the parties to develop a dialogue through good faith effort to be responsible and cooperative neighbors. And 5, costs and fees shall be shared equally by the parties. So he has spoken. What remains is this needs to be entered into judgment. And I would propose then that our process, that is to speak with our attorney in executive session, is certainly appropriate in that there are steps that continue. There's also obviously the step of appeal if someone were to choose to do that. So I have determined from him that midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of either this coming week or the week after would be best for him to meet with us. And I also suggested that we might do that, as has been our practice on some occasions, in the late afternoon. And he concurred that that would be in his best interest. So I'm proposing that we decide to meet on the 25th, 6th, or 7th of August, or the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd of September, whatever might meet the council's preferences, in order to meet an executive session with Attorney Galvin.
Do you have a time frame for that afternoon, Bob?
You mean how long it would take, or what?
No, just particularly, are we talking 1 o'clock? We're talking 3 o'clock? We're talking 5?
No, I'm saying, if I didn't say, I meant 4 to 5:30.
Oh, okay. Then I'm available for, I think all 6 of those times.
Bob, I'll be available next Tuesday at 4 o'clock.
I can, as at the moment, Councilor Anderson, I can be available, I think at all those times.
Okay.
Yeah, I can make anything work.
Okay.
Do you want a motion? You want a motion, Bob, that you make the appointment and confirm with us on the date? That way you can make the schedule the appointment, and then we're all in concurrence already. That way you don't have to go back and forth with us.
Yes, based on Councilor Mataronis's response, I'm going to first suggest the 25th, Tuesday, the 25th of August at 4 p.m. And, but I would appreciate that the motion charge me with establishing a date and time that's mutually agreeable to the members of the council.
I'll move that.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to schedule executive session as specified. Any further discussion? Counselor Anderson,
Aye.
Counselor Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. The next item of business is communications, and it's an application for a mobile food establishment received from Charles McGuire doing business as Captain's Finest out of a mobile food dispensing vehicle.
Well, I'll motion to approve with all the specific things that we require of them now. And I know the state just changed how we apply these now.
I'll second that, but I just want to make sure this is going to be restricted to where we restrict them now, like South Shore Beach or Veterans Field. I wouldn't want to see it on the side of the road somewhere.
Here's what our ordinance requires is that the person submit a completed town application, which he has done, that the total number of MFE permits we issue is less than 5, which it is, that the allowed operations are between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. He has been instructed in that, and that MFEs are to be stationary while selling and not closer than 200 feet to any permanent establishment serving food. He's been instructed in that. And that if he were to wish to sell at South Shore Beach, he must first receive the approval of the Beach Commission. Now, I don't know if that accommodates all of the things that you said.
Well,
No, is it-
let me just say, suppose we're heading north out of town where West Main Road and Old West Main Road or Old Main Road, at that V there, would he be allowed to sell his wares there?
Just east of Taylor's Lane?
No, heading out of town up by Windmill Hill. where
Oh.
Old Main Road.
Old
West
Main Road, sorry.
At the V, you know, the V there where the,
I think the way it's written, Gary, he could.
Yeah,
May I clarify that, yes, it's written in fashion, but you would need to have permission from the property owner with which he's selling. You can't just stop on the side of the road and sell. He has to have permission. And the other thing you want to recognize here is he's not a food vending truck where you can go up and get a sandwich. He's selling frozen seafood. So I just want to clarify that. It is not their intent, from what they're telling me, that they want to vend throughout the entire town. They have a location with a property owner in a business district that is agreeable for them to set up in their.
well, just as long as it doesn't impinge on the fishermen down here at Secana. As you all know, we're going through some pretty rough times, so I wouldn't want him to see him coming down here and selling his wares down here at Secana Point.
Motion's made and seconded. I believe you seconded it, Gary, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
it does not appear that that is his intention to move through the town selling in various locations.
Okay.
Counselor Anderson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Golembeski,
Aye.
Arenas,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. The next item of business is a letter from the Little Compton Community Center inquiring about hosting a free outdoor movie night using Veterans Field on either September 12th or 19th. I will point out that the governor has recently announced a initiative to take it outside. And this appears to comport with that in the sense that this would be gathering people outside. It obviously would need to meet all other restrictions, which we have had some discussion of already this evening.
Bob, I don't have a problem going forward with this and approving it, but as long as all the stipulations have to be adhered to with the COVID-19 and also with both the fire and police chiefs.
I'll second that.
So the motion is to approve, given that all necessary COVID protections are taken, and that would be social distancing and mask wearing, and that the fire chief and police chief's approval, is that your intention?
Yes, approval, yes.
Approval be gained. And that's the motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion? All right, Councilor Anderson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Lushan, aye. Thank you. The next is the abatement list received from the tax assessor.
I did have email communication with the tax assessor. And she informed me that everything was okay with this. Obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. The house was demolished over on Warren's Point, so it reduced the amount the house was worth. So I'll make a motion to approve the abatement list.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the abatement list. Is there discussion? Councilor Anderson,
I vote aye.
Golembeski,
Aye.
Mataronis,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Lushan, aye. Just to go back for just a moment to the previous item, I noticed that Amy Lotz is still on the line, and want to acknowledge that it was her request from the community center. So thank you for making the request, and hope the motion meets your expectation. The next item of business is payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
The discussion. Motion's made by Golembeski, second by Mataronis. Councilor Anderson,
Vote aye.
Councilor Golembeski,
Aye.
Councilor Mataronis,
Aye.
Councilor Moore,
Aye.
Lushan, aye. This concludes the business before us. There being no other, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.